Well, I want to welcome everyone to this CSTA Computer Science Update webinar. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me before we get started. I know we're expecting a few more people that have registered as well. I just want to let everyone know that we are recording this webinar and that this webinar will be posted on our website, lowcountrycsta.com, and you'll be able to share it with others to make sure they have all the up-to-date information. I know some people emailed and said they were unable to attend. So a couple things. I want to make sure everyone has access to the slides. So if you want a copy of the slides, in the top left corner is a shortened URL. It's the bit.ly in the top left corner. And you'll be able to access the slides. And I'm going to check one more setting with my microphone. I see one person's having some issues, so give me 1 second. I'm going to mute myself and I'll unmute myself in a moment. Okay, so I'm back. So the bit.ly URL in the top left corner is the slides here. To get us started, I want to give a quick overview of who we are, Lowcountry CSTA, also known as CSTA South Carolina. We are in the process of rebranding to match the national CSTA logo and branding. Our goal, our mission is to develop excellence in computing teachers throughout the state and to inspire students to learn computer science by making the connections with industry and universities, and also to provide excellent curricular and extracurricular activities. And so basically, we're here to help you. And so there's a national CSTA chapter as well as the South Carolina chapter, and both are absolutely free to join. There is a paid membership to the national chapter if you do want to obtain some of those extra benefits that come with being a CSTA Plus member, but both are free to join. And just to give you a little overview of the officers of our local chapter here in South Carolina, all of our officers are involved in CSTA initiatives, both at the national and state levels. So we have been heavily involved over the last couple of years in standards writings and committees that the State Department has been putting together, as well as providing professional development. So we have extensive experience with all things computer science education, including pedagogy and professional development and curriculum resources and things like that. We have been hosting a couple events a year, and those are face-to-face events. We also have been hosting some webinars. So please, if you're not already a member, make sure you join our Lowcountry CSTA chapter, as well as check out our events page on our website so that you can learn some more about what events we have had in the past, as well as ones that we have coming up. So a couple things. One of the biggest questions we get about computer science in the state is why? Why is this happening? What's going on with computer science? And it's good to have a little bit of a background knowledge and understanding about South Carolina's origins of where things are kind of stemming from with the initiatives that are happening in South Carolina. Back in November 2016, the State Department of Education, as well as the Education Oversight Committee, published a report called the Joint Task Force on Computer Science and Information Technology. So if we go back a couple of years and we take a dive into this report, we'll find the report noticed 5 findings in South Carolina. And they noticed that there's a national and state data that's high demand and significant job growth expected in the next 10 years for computer science, IT, and related fields. They also noticed that the opportunities in South Carolina are severely limited, and for minorities, they're disproportionately underrepresented in the courses we're already offering. It also noticed we have few post-secondary teacher prep programs in computer science, and by few, it's actually 0. There are 0 teacher prep programs for computer science, and also that the citizens of South Carolina have limited awareness of career opportunities, but they also made note in their findings that the State Department was already beginning to take actions to expand access. So this is where we were a couple of years ago. And from some national statistics from code.org, some things to know about computer science on the national level is that computing jobs are the #1 source of new wages in the US. There are 500,000 current openings, and they're in every industry in every state, and they're projected to grow at twice the rate of all other jobs. And so computer science touches every industry and every part of the United States. 71% of all new jobs in STEM fields are in computing, but we're only graduating 8% of those graduates in computer science and STEM graduates. So it's a really disproportionate number of graduates to how many jobs there are. Also, what is computer science? And this is the national definition of computer science. It's the study of computers and algorithmic processes, including their principles, their hardware and software designs, their applications, and their impact on society. It's the art of blending human ideas and digital tools to increase problem-solving power, communication, problem-solving, and creativity. And then programming is writing a set of instructions for the computer so that it understands what a human wants it to do. But there are some big ideas in computer science, and I think one of the biggest misconceptions in South Carolina is that we've been defining computer science in this state as for the last 30 years as a graduation requirement, and we've been including many different things under that term, computer science. And in the state of South Carolina, we use the definition of anything that was 90% computer use. A course that was 90% computer use used to be counted as a computer science course for graduation. But that's not really what computer science is. And computer science, as a true definition of computer science, has some really big ideas. So one misnomer is that people think that computer science is programming. Well, actually, programming is a subset or part of computer science, but it's not the only thing that computer science is. So I like this slide because this slide tells us some of the other categories that fall under this big idea that computer science encompasses. So you have creativity, abstraction and problem solving, big data and information, algorithms, programming and coding, the internet, and the global impact of computing. So computer science is this overarching umbrella of many things that have to do with computing as a whole. So a couple things: computer science is not typing. It's not being able to play games or being able to type or use social media or navigate a computer or apps. It's not knowing how to use software applications like Google Docs or Microsoft Office. It's not being good with technology. It's not computer literacy or digital citizenship. And it's not using educational technology. It's more than that. So if we go back to that joint task force on computer science and information technology that the State Department of Education as well as the Education Oversight Committee did in South Carolina back in 2016, their definition that they adopted was the Computer Science Teachers Association, the national chapter's definition, which is the study of computers and algorithmic processes, including their principles, their hardware and software designs, their applications, and their impact on society, which, as we just saw in the previous slides, is the same definition that code.org uses. So you can see that the task force that was driving computer science initiatives in the state of South Carolina used the same definition as national initiatives. So that's just to bring some clarity into the conversation of what is computer science. I wanted to start us off with just a general overview of who we are, Computer Science Teachers Association, and what computer science is defined as at the national, as well as this onset of this computer science initiatives in our state. For those of you just joining us, as our just some background information, this is Rosemary Bianchi. I am the CTE program manager at Lexington Technology Center, but I'm also the secretary of the South Carolina Computer Science Teachers Association, which is Lowcountry CSTA. So as we continue our talk today, we have laundry list of things to look at. And as I go through, if you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box, as well as at the end, I will allow everyone to be unmuted to go ahead and ask questions via audio. But for the sake of the overall webinar, I think it'd be best if questions are submitted in the chat box as we move along. I'll address them if they're relevant on this slide, or if I think it'd be better to handle them in some future slides, I will address them there. But we're going to talk about a lot of things that are going on in the state of South Carolina revolving around computer science. Our goal with this webinar is to put all of the current up-to-date information as of March 1st, 2019 in one place. And so we wanted to get all the information out there so that you have it, so that you can send it to your district leadership or to your teachers if you are district leadership, or you can use it in the plans that you are making in your schools and in your classrooms. So as a reminder, if you're just joining late, in the top right corner is the URL to access these slides. So you can access the slides, and this webinar will be recorded and posted on the lowcountrycsta.com website so that you can reference the audio as well in the future. So let's jump right in. The number one question we get, and I think is fresh on everyone's mind, is what's going on with the graduation requirement? So there's been a lot of memos that have come out from the State Department of Education. There's been a lot of presentations. There's been a lot of communication. And I'm happy to say we are finally at a final publication, final document for the 2019-2020 school year. There was a memo that was released February 20th, which was just last week, or well, the week before last, that links to the final list, the 2019-2020 list. However, there's been a delay in that being published on the State Department's website, so you can access that from our website here, lowcountrycsta.com, frequently asked questions/policy. And I'm going to take us there now so that we can look at this together. If you haven't yet visited our frequently asked questions section of our website, it's been growing extensively the last couple of weeks, and it's a great place for all things computer science questions. So please take some time to delve into that. We'll be looking at some of it today. So when it comes to the graduation requirement, that is on the South Carolina Policy Frequently Asked Question tab, and it's the second question down. But the number one question right now is what courses will count in 2019-2020, and there's a link to the courses to fulfill computer science graduation requirement, and that will actually take you to the State Department of Education's website. So it's not, this is not hosted on our website. The document I'm showing you right now is on the State Department's website. There's just not an easy way to get to it yet because the memo, this memo here, has not yet been published on the State Department's website, but it will be coming. I asked again this morning. They're working on it. But this memo was released last week. It's a memo basically, all it's doing is saying, hey, we finalized the list. All the other versions that you have seen of the list up to this point for next school year have always stated they were proposed. So even in the activity coding system guide for this school year, it still had an Appendix N and Appendix O, and Appendix O was proposed. All of the former memos all said proposed. This is the final list for 2019-2020, and it is linked on our website for the time being, and once the State Department updates their website, we will link to that memo directly. So a couple of things to note about the computer science list for graduation is there are some new course numbers specifically for fundamentals of computing, as well as for discovering computer science. They both have a 1 unit, 1 credit course number, as well as half credit course numbers to be offered in the middle school if your school district is choosing to offer that course in the middle school. So this list is not that different. There really isn't any courses being removed from what was in the proposed list, the Appendix O list. Nothing's been removed. But you'll see that this is the final list for next school year. At the bottom of the list, the State Department has provided some descriptions and additional information about introductory courses that your district may choose to satisfy the graduation requirement. We'll come back to that in a moment and look at those. I want to come back to the graduation requirement. So this new list, I hope many of you on this call were aware that the list was changing, but if you weren't, the list for next school year is changing to be true computer science. That definition we just looked at was the definition used to guide the choices for which courses should be included in that list. And so courses like Google Apps and image editing and integrated business applications have all been removed to count for the graduation requirement and will no longer count starting next school year. So that's what this frequently asked questions section is explaining. So the list will go into effect 2019-20 school year for all students who have not yet earned their computer science credit. Yes, if a senior has not yet earned their credit, they must take a course from the new list. And I think there's some confusion. There's been some misinformation regarding it's only for incoming freshmen. That is not true. The new list goes into effect immediately for all students who have not yet earned their computer science credit. So it's not for rising freshmen only, it's for all students who have not yet earned their credit. So the State Department of Education has also released in a couple different meetings, as well as I believe through the listserv, that if you are not ready to offer a course on the new list, if your school district does not offer one of those courses already and you are not ready to, the deadline has passed, so you will need to reach out to the State Department to see if you can still submit an application. But there was an opportunity for your school district to apply for a 1-year transition year, basically a waiver for next school year, allowing you to use the old list for 1 additional year until your school district was ready to implement the new list. Again, that deadline was last week, so if you did not meet that deadline, you will need to reach out to the State Department of Education CTE office directly to ask for it if it's available to continue to apply for that waiver. As we continue on, I want us to talk a little bit more about those introductory classes that are the State Department put additional information in that document about, because this is a really integral decision that school districts are making right now, is which course or courses should I offer in my district for my students? And that question is a very complex question. Every school district and every school has many, many factors that contribute to that decision. What personnel do you have in place? How many sections of a course can you offer or do you need to offer? What's your student population, etc.? There's so many factors. And so there's no one right answer for every school district. So I want to take a moment to discuss some things to consider while your district makes this decision. And as I said previously, the State Department has provided information about some of these courses at the bottom of that list to try and help school districts make an informed decision. So let's revisit that list. Discovering computer science is likely a course that you have never heard of. It's actually a course that was an innovative course app, and it's becoming a full course starting next school year. The standards will be released, it's my understanding, by summer. They are being finalized this spring with a committee that the State Department is pulling together. But it's an introductory course that has a survey of computer science, and it's a hands-on course. The students are making authentic artifacts. They're engaging in computer science with creativity in mind. It's computational thinking and problem solving being applied to a variety of context. It's really a very fundamental survey course of all things computer science. It doesn't do a deep dive into careers. It doesn't do a deep dive into pathways in computer science and where this could lead if you wanted to actually pursue computer science as a career field. It's really for anybody who's interested in any career field to get a general idea of how computing impacts our world and impacts society. Fundamentals of computing is Again, a survey course. It's the basics. It involves critical thinking and problem solving, again, creativity and artifacts. It takes a slightly deeper dive in the career side of things, as well as the societal and ethical impacts of computing. So they're going to take that career piece and dig quite a bit more into it. And this is the course that's recommended for students that are pursuing a computer science major or pathway. Now, the State Department has not finalized what I'm about to say. They haven't finalized this decision, but it is my understanding the intent of these courses is that fundamentals of computing will lead into CTE completer pathways, but discovering computer science is not intended to be the intro course to a CTE completer pathway. It's really just a course for all students, but doesn't necessarily dig enough into careers to be included in a CTE completer pathway. It's been a general advisement of our organization, me personally, as well as many people in our state, that fundamentals of computing, which used to be called exploring computer science, is really a go-to course for all schools, for all students. So if you're looking at your school being able to offer only one course, my recommendation would be fundamentals of computing. I think fundamentals of computing would be the course that if you can only offer one course at your school or your school district, start there. That's really the best place. Some schools are looking at offering discovering computer science in the 7th and 8th grade, and then fundamentals of computing in the 9th grade. And so they're having both of those offered in their school districts, but are able to distinguish the implementation based on the grades that they're taught in. Some things to note is both of those courses are not vendor specific, but there are many curriculums that map to those courses. For example, code.org CS Discoveries maps nearly seamlessly to discovering computer science, and the Exploring Computer Science curriculum out of Chicago maps nearly seamlessly to the fundamentals of computing. Those are just two examples. There are many other curriculum choices out there that map to both of those courses. The third course here that's listed is AP Computer Science Principles. And I think sometimes when people think AP, they automatically narrow down who that course is for. So I want to broaden that thought process with you for a moment. AP Computer Science Principles is actually it's the newest AP course that's in existence. It has one of the highest passage rates for a new AP course. It's well above 70% passage rate. So it's also designed to be inclusive. The course is designed to be very inclusive of a variety of students. They advertise and they encourage honors level students to take this as their first level or first course into AP. It's designed for a lower age range. So it's designed for, where 9th and 10th graders can be successful in this AP course. It's very similar to fundamentals of computing, but it's equivalent to a first semester introductory computing course, and what a lot of colleges call CS0. It's, like I said, an inclusive audience. It's a gateway for students who are interested in subsequent AP courses. It is recommended that students do have a foundation in Algebra 1. There is no prerequisites, but there is an AP exam at the end of the course. And with AP Computer Science Principles, the AP exam is both a multiple choice question-based exam, as well as a artifact submission. So students will actually submit a project or a portfolio as part of their AP exam. So it's not solely dependent on their performance on one test at the end, because they do have an opportunity to demonstrate mastery through their artifacts that they submit. AP Computer Science Principles would be also my recommendation to schools. I personally do not recommend that students take fundamentals of computing and then AP Computer Science Principles. I think that AP Computer Science Principles is kind of like the honors level fundamentals of computing, and that's how students can make a decision on which course is right for them, or schools to make a decision on which course is right for their schools. The next few courses begin to specialize. And this is my recommendation personally, that these courses not be universally offered to all students at your school. So Fundamentals of Web Page Design and Development is designed for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students. It's a specialized course focusing on only one area of computer science. The 3 courses we just looked at cover an array of computer science topics. They hit all those big ideas that is under the computer science umbrella, but Fundamentals of Web Page Design and Development really narrows in on only one area of computer science. And it really is recommended for students who are truly interested in learning web design and development, industry standard languages, because it also is a course that prepares students for industry credentials. And as we know, not all students truly are going to be interested in earning an industry credential in web page design and development. And it is up to the school district, but some school districts may choose to require Discovering Computer Science or Fundamentals of Computing as a prerequisite, because both Discovering Computer Science and Fundamentals of Computing hit a unit on web page design and development. So it would be a very natural prerequisite for schools to include. I think in our state, there's been a lot of confusion about IT fundamentals, and there have been some recommendations that IT fundamentals, there's been a lot of changes at the national level with the certification exam. So if you're familiar with this course over the last couple of years, there is a certification exam that maps to, or that used to map to, our state standards. But then the certification provider made a massive overhaul of their certification. So I know that there's been some conversations about what this class will look like or should look like in our state, because our standards that we currently have in place no longer map to the national certification because the certification changed drastically. But it's the course that we have in South Carolina is truly an introduction to IT careers and IT. It's not really a survey course that I think every student should take. It's entry-level IT. It's computer repair, it's installing stuff, it's configuring settings, it's securing computers, it's computer hardware, operating systems, software in both the home environment as well as corporate and enterprise environments, common practices for troubleshooting, customer service. It's not recommended for students below grade 9. I know that the old versions of the standards did have it recommended for lower grades, but that is being revised. Additionally, it's specialized and it allows them to explore IT topics that will then lead into IT pathways like networking, cybersecurity, operating systems, computer repair, server administration. If you're familiar with the career and technology ed, the CTE pathways, you'll notice that list are the pathways. And so it's a rigorous course that aligns to industry credentials, or get students ready for the upper level industry credentials. And it's really for students interested in pursuing IT majors and IT pathways. It's not recommended for students pursuing other computer science majors. So students interested in pursuing programming and software development, this really is not the best prerequisite for them. They would be much better off taking a Fundamentals of Computing course. So the state's list leaves off a few other courses that I'd like to discuss with you, and I actually have them listed at the bottom of our website, the CSTA, lowcountrycsta.com website, the CS Education, but there are 3 more courses that I think are introductory level that I think would be something your school district should consider, but they should not be your first consideration per se, unless you are Project Leadway. But I didn't want to forget mentioning Computer Science A. Computer Science A, AP Computer Science A is an AP course, advanced placement course, but it is a Java programming advanced placement course. It is a college level programming course. It's very rigorous. It's very intensive. It does have some recommended math prerequisites. It's not for everybody by any stretch of the imagination, but it is for our students who are looking for that AP level programming course. And so I do want to make sure it's mentioned here because there are no computer science prerequisites to that course. There are some math, typically some math prerequisites, but a junior student or a senior student should be able to jump right in there and be successful if they meet some of the prerequisites in math as well as are an AP level student. The Project Lead the Way courses that are on the list that are worth mentioning because they don't have prerequisites or don't require another computer science course in front of them. Computer Science Essentials as well as Principles of Engineering are both still on that list. So that's just some general advice and understanding of the courses that would be considered introductory on that list. Now, there are many other courses on that list that might be the right fit for your school district. Things like computer science, IB, like IB computer science. Maybe you guys have IB at your school. Well, that might be a good fit. There's computer programming courses, and your district will need to decide how you're putting your computer pathways in place as well. Networking is on there, server admin, things like that. A lot of the additional courses on here require prerequisites. So like in order to go into game design and development, there's usually a programming prerequisite. So that's why I didn't specifically mention those. One course that is mentioned that some of you may wonder why it was left out, which is also the same thing. Fundamentals of Animation. Fundamentals of Animation is a specific category of computer science. It's personally not my recommendation for all your students in your school. It really tailors into a very specific pathway, as well as aligns to industry certifications. So there should be that element of rigor there in terms of career rigor, getting students ready to pursue a career in that path. So the reason why Fundamentals of Computing and Discovering Computer Science, as well as AP Computer Science P Principles are recommended is because those courses really are a survey of computer science and prepare all students, no matter what industry, no matter what field they're going into, with a perspective of problem solving with computing devices and the algorithmic thinking, that computational thinking that comes along with learning computer science, not just programming. And somebody's asking why Principles of Engineering is on the list, and it's my understanding, and we are not a Project Lead the Way school, so someone will need to correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that Principles of Engineering is the course that is the VEX Robotics course, the programming course. And so because there's the VEX Robotics and the programming piece involved in the VEX Robotics would include that or be included in that course. If that's not the case, then that most likely needs to be addressed with the State Department of Education. Again, we are not a Project Lead the Way school, so I am not completely familiar with the engineering pathway, Project Lead the Way pathway. Okay, so let's continue on. If you have any specific questions, feel free to ask them. Feel free to ask them as we move along. And it appears that someone has confirmed, thank you, Tammy, that that the VEX Robotics is in the POE course for Project Lead the Way. So as you know, there's still many things going on with the computer science initiatives. I think we finally have kind of finalized where we're currently at with computer science graduation requirement, but where are things at with where's this heading in the future? Now, I do not work for the State Department of Education, and I cannot speak on their behalf. However, I would imagine, as well as anticipate, I'm anticipating that there are upcoming revisions in regards to course standards and pathways. The state has approved high school computer science standards, as well as been making changes to the graduation requirement. And so a natural next step would be to be looking at a overview of computer science pathways and what those look like, making sure they align to national initiatives, as well as course standards for each of those individual courses included in those pathways. Me personally would caution you to be in communication with the State Department of Education when working on long-term planning. I wouldn't right now, as you know, computer science has been changing every single year for the past 3 school years, and I anticipate that to continue at least for the next 1 or 2 years. And so if it were me, I've been telling and advising my school district as well as other school districts to take caution with long-term planning. It's very hard right now to tell where things will be at in a year or two in regards to courses and pathways. And so I wouldn't overhaul an entire pathway or your entire course offerings. I would start with that intro course of what are you going to offer for the graduation requirement. I can tell you now, it is my best guess that fundamentals of computing and AP isn't going anywhere. I mean, it's AP. But I mean, like things like fundamentals of computing is a course that has been heavily invested in the state. There's been a lot of work poured into it to bring it up to date. It also aligns with national initiatives. So I think there's not a lot of risk in choosing that course moving forward and what that would look like for future planning of majors and things like that. But I would anticipate that we are looking at additional changes on the curriculum side of things, or the instructional side, I should say, of things with the standards and pathways. So just keep that in mind as while you're making planning, that we may not have finalized revisions there. So just be very cognizant of that as you move forward. Another hot topic that comes up that we get tons of questions about is legislation. What's going on with legislation? And we are in a new legislative session. If you're not familiar, the state of South Carolina is on a 2-year legislative session. And so we're on the 2019-2020 session. So any legislation that does not pass before the end of the General Assembly, which I believe is towards the end of May, early June this year, anything that doesn't pass this year will continue automatically to next year, and then if it doesn't pass next year, we start completely over. So any policy and any legislation that was in place, any bills that were being proposed last legislative session, that was the end of the 2-year cycle, so those completely fell off and we started completely new this year. Now, if you're not following education legislation in South Carolina, I strongly suggest you do some reading and some research. It's a very education-focused legislative year, and there's a lot of education reform being proposed. There are 2 bills that are currently being proposed that include computer science legislation. This is up to date as of last week because I didn't search again this today, but it is computer science does have a portion in the bill that has a lot of other educational topics included in it. So if you haven't yet heard of House Bill 3759 or the buddy or corresponding bill Senate 419, I strongly suggest that you take a look at both of those bills. They are very, very, very similar still at this state. But these bills are the bills that contain verbiage in regards to computer science. And to bring that up on our screen, because everyone wants to read legislation, right? Okay, to bring that up on the screen, this is the current computer science portion of the bill. Initially, it was the verbiage here initially was the same verbiage that it basically was copy and pasted from last year's bill. So if you were following the bill last year, it's very, very, very similar verbiage. Some dates have been changed along with a few other minor things, but this is the general information that's being proposed in the bill. As always, I encourage you to read it. I encourage you to advocate for what you believe in with your local legislators. We do not take a policy stand with Computer Science Teachers Association, but you, by all means, definitely have every right to contact your legislators and have an opinion. I can tell you, based on my watching of the legislative subcommittee meetings, that this bill does appear to be moving fast. So if you have an opinion, I strongly suggest you act on that quickly if you plan on acting, just because the bill has been in a lot of committees and subcommittee meetings, and it is moving on a daily basis very quickly through the legislative process. But that is all, those are the only bills right now in regards to computer science education. Additionally, those are on our frequently asked questions page on policy. I do have those linked there. So if you want to send those to people, the links are linked down below. And if we discover more legislation, we'll continue to add it here. If you notice any legislation that's related to computer science or coding or STEM education that impacts computer science that we have not included here, please feel free to email me. I'll have my contact information at the end, but we would definitely appreciate your eyes and ears if you see something that we are missing. Okay, standards. There's also a lot of questions we get about standards. So I just want to bring a clarity to the picture about what we have going on in South Carolina so that you can be informed. The K-8 computer science and digital literacy standards, that's what those CS and DL, computer science and digital literacy standards, were approved by the state board in May 2017, and they were mandated for full implementation starting the 2018-2019 school year. Okay, that means this school year, every single school district in the state of South Carolina is legally required to be teaching every single kindergarten through 8th grade student in our state computer science standards. So if you have not heard about what your school district's initiative is to make that happen, you might want to bring it to the attention of your district leadership that these standards exist and they are mandated to be taught. Every school district has had their own leeway and their own authority to choose how to implement those standards. So some school districts are choosing to embed them into their core subject areas and embed them into maybe social studies or English language arts or math, and they have been creating lessons and embedding computer science and computational thinking and problem solving with computing into the academic classrooms or integrated into an interdisciplinary integration. Some school districts have chosen, like us, to use the librarians as well as the computer lab instructors as well as the classroom to divide up and kind of divide and conquer the standards to make sure that lessons are being taught that cover all of the standards. The standards have multiple key concepts. So there's the digital literacy key concept. There's there's computing systems. I'm doing this from memory, so forgive me. Computing systems, networks in the internet, algorithms and programming, impact of computing, data and analysis, as well as digital literacy. So there's 6 key concepts in the K-8 standards that cover an array of computer science topics. There's also a content overlay. So if your school district is looking at an interdisciplinary implementation, this link here will take you to a document that matches the computer science standards with the state of South Carolina's academic standards for K through 8th grade. The high school standards, the computer science standards for high school, which those are links, by the way, those headings at the top, those were state board approved in August 2018. And there's been a lot of confusion and questions and concern about what these standards mean. At this time, it is not mandated for any school to be teaching the high school standards. They have not yet been utilized in any course revisions. Well, they're just starting to be used in course revision. Okay, so I've had people say, what am I supposed to be doing? These were approved. Yes, they were approved. You do not need to be using them yet. What's going to happen is the computer science standards for high school are to inform and drive the future plans for computer science course revisions as well as pathway creation. And from a memo back in April, it says these standards will drive instruction for students interested in exploring computer science in high school and or pursuing a post-secondary career in computer science or related fields. It is the intent, it's my understanding, it is the intent of the State Department of Ed to be using these standards as they move forward with computer science initiatives. It's very hard to move forward with course revisions and pathway creation and what that all looks like when you don't have standards to inform those decisions. So that is what's going on with the high school standards. So right now, don't be concerned with implementing those courses. Those standards were never written to be for courses. There are 4 levels of standards for high school, and that doesn't mean that those are going to end up being 4 computer science courses and that's all that's ever going to exist. Some things to note is that 4 out of your 5 officers for Lowcountry CSTA sat on these standards writings committees. I know there's many people on this webinar that also sat in these standards writings committees. So we were there throughout the entire conversation of getting these standards written. So if you have questions, we can help answer those. Just feel free to ask or shoot us an email if you don't want to ask on the webinar. Another thing to note is that the K-8 and the high school standards mainly, okay, perfect. I apologize for that cutting out. I know right now you don't see my screen. I'll get it back. Give me a moment. Perfect. Good. Everyone can hear me. We'll start with that. So I was in the middle of a sentence. and I was talking about the standards mapping to the computer science, national computer science standards. So the K-8 and the high school standards, for the most part, map to the national K-12 CS framework as well as the national CSTA standards. So that's something to keep in mind, is that these standards, when you're looking at curriculum and you're looking at different resources, that these resources, if they map to the national standards or the national frameworks, that they most likely closely map to our state standards. So that makes that vetting of some of those resources a little bit easier for you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I wanted to make that note down there to ensure that you are aware that when you start looking for resources and stuff, our standards are a little bit different. They are a little bit different, but they do map fairly closely to the national standards. So you should be able to use a lot of resources that map to the national standards in your instruction. Let's continue on. Okay, so another question that comes up is, I am working on my budget for next year, and I know that the computer science requirement is changing, and there's so much going on with computer science. I need to make sure I put money in my budget for computer science. Let me start by saying that a vast majority of anything and everything you need for computer science is free. You can throw a little happy dance over there, okay? Most everything for computer science is free. Now, everything, but most everything. You can get up and running for very little expense. So things like fundamentals, if you're looking at using teaching Discovering Computer Science or Fundamentals of Computing, there are probably 20 to 30 entire curriculums out there that map to the standards that are free, okay? And so there's so much stuff out there that is extremely affordable. And not only is the curriculum free, but the curriculum also uses free tools. So there's a lot of free software licenses as well. Now, that doesn't mean everything. Your district may choose to use a course like game design and development, where you need to purchase software licenses, or you may choose to use a specific curriculum resource that has some sort of license fee. I do encourage you to assess what your district's needs are so that you can make those informed decisions. Additionally, I am a huge fan of robotics and integrating physical computing into every single computer science course at every single level. I think a lot of our kinesthetic learners learn by being able to see their programming or their solutions actually in fruition, and they can hold them and they can see the code working using physical computing or robotics. Now, that's an added expense. But that being said, there are physical computing resources out there that start at $15 to $16 a kit. So there's definitely opportunities to save money or to spend as much as you want. So that's something to think about. One other thing to think about right now specifically is professional development. One of the future slides shows you some links to some professional development that may or may not still have seats available, but professional development is becoming less and less free. So right now there's a lot of free stuff available this summer, but as you begin to look forward, just note that some of the grants that are funding that professional development on a national level, those grants are not really available in future years. So you will start to find that free professional development is becoming less and less available. So just keep that in mind, that if something comes your way to get professional development for free, you may want to definitely think about that. But as a school district, you may need to be assessing whether it's more cost effective to have somebody come into your district and teach professional development, or if you need to send your teachers to professional development, depending on the travel expenses and all that, you'll need to choose what's right for your district. Just keep in mind that professional development is going to be needed. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that the State Department has released any type of information in terms of requirements. I'm saying that I highly recommend that any teacher that's converting over to a computer science course like Discovering Computer Science or Fundamentals of Computing, or even web page design and development, or AP Computer Science Principles, which is required for AP, but I'm recommending that an introductory computer science professional development experience will provide teachers with a general understanding of what is computer science and why is it important, and pedagogy specific to teaching computer science, that I think it's an integral step to send every teacher that's going to be teaching these classes to some sort of professional development experience. Most of the teachers that are teaching these courses don't have experience with them, so you're really helping enable them with the tools that they need to be great teachers. You know, they're going to be able to take their pedagogy and their classroom management and all those wonderful teaching practices that they already have and be able to learn how to use those with a new content area. And so I strongly suggest that you consider professional development for every teacher that's going to be in your school district teaching computer science. So that brings us to the certification and required credentials to teach computer science. There's a ton of questions about this. People want to know what's going on. This is one of those hot topics, what's happening with certification. So let's take a look again at our website. There's a tab at the top for certification when you're on the frequently asked questions. And one of the things that have been around for over a year now is actually 2 years, the computer science certification. So there is computer science certification in the state of South Carolina. Currently, though, the only way to obtain that is through reciprocity up until a couple months ago when they finally released guidelines to get it. So for a while there, the only way to have been able to get computer science certified is if you were computer science certified in another state. We still don't have any colleges or universities in South Carolina offering an educator prep program in computer science. So right now it's either through reciprocity or through add-on. And add-on is, the details for add-on certification were just recently released, not too long ago. And it's actually pretty simple to get the certification add-on. They've added new options for a lot of certification areas. Computer science was one of them. So you can choose the by coursework route and you can take college courses. You'll need 5 courses in 15 semester hours in computer science topics in the key concepts, or you can choose to take just the exam and pass the exam. Now, that being said, this praxis exam is one that would probably require most teachers to do a little bit of studying to pass. There are some professional development programs out there that are nationwide that are tailored to this praxis exam. But basically, to get computer science certified in the state of South Carolina, you can either get it through reciprocity or you can add on with coursework or by the computer science exam, the praxis exam. But that doesn't answer who needs to get certified. So let's talk a little bit about who needs to get certified. So K-8 teachers, according to the memo out in March 15, 2017, K-8 teachers do not need to be computer science certified to teach the course, the K-8 standard. However, it does say it's because they will not result in high school graduation. At this time, there is not any clarification in regards to what, if you have to be computer science certified in order to teach a course for graduation. In order to teach a course for graduation at the middle school level, you do have to abide by the required credentials document, which is linked up here. So the 2018-19 required credentials document applies for this year and this year only. So right now there has not been any required credentials document released for future years. So what the requirement in place right now is a variety of certification areas to teach the computer science classes. Business and marketing and computer technology certified, science, math, it's an array of certifications. It's by course. So if you're not sure if you're allowed to take teach a certain course, click on this link and find the course name and see if you are allowed. Now remember, this is for this school year only. They have not released a 2019-2020 required credentials document yet. So if you're making plans for next school year and you have specific questions, I strongly suggest you contact the State Department of Education directly. Now, they did announce in the November 15th Instructional Leaders Roundtable, and I linked that presentation, that this is their tentative plan. They have not finalized this plan or published this plan or announced this plan, but it is a tentative plan that for the 2019-20 school year that they will be allowed to continue with the required credentials in place for the 18-19 school year. But then 2020 and beyond, they will be releasing a updated list with a timeline, and they said they'd publish it in January, which it hasn't been published yet, but they're anticipating a multi-year process to get recertified. So that's the current information we have in regards to who needs to get certified. That being said, it is my personal opinion, and I have expressed my personal opinion to the State Department, and I do encourage you as well, if you have your own opinion, to reach out directly. But it's my personal opinion that the praxis exam and to get computer science certified really isn't necessary to teach the fundamentals of computing course. That's my own opinion. I don't know what the choice of the State Department will be, but if you look at the national trends of who is teaching courses similar to fundamentals of computing over the entire nation, very few states, actually I don't know that any, are requiring computer science praxis or computer science certification for teachers teaching that intro level course. So the course, and then like for AP computer science principles, the national requirement is just that you attend their training and you can be certified in anything. So if we're going with national trends, and my recommendation, which I'm not saying they're going to use my recommendation, but the national trends tend to indicate that computer science praxis, computer science certification really isn't necessary in order to be a successful teacher to teach the introductory level computer science courses. Once you start to get into specialized courses or upper level courses, then it's my opinion that computer science certification really should steer that. So somebody's asking regarding those who have already been certified or already have degrees in computer science and about being grandfathered. Again, you'll need to contact the State Department of Ed directly regarding that question. It is possible that if you already have a degree that you may just need, it's likely and possible, they're just going to ask you to go ahead and take the praxis anyway. Just like you would have, years ago when you first got certified in the state, you would have still had to take the corresponding praxis. And yes, Jody, your question is correct. If you do choose the pathway to do coursework, this is a very good point. If you do choose to complete the computer science add-on by coursework, you still have to take the praxis exam. Yes, you have to take the 15 credit hours plus the praxis exam. That is step 3. So yes, either way, you have to take the praxis. Just keep in mind one major difference here is that it is not available to do add-on by exam if you are on initial certification. If you have an initial certificate, you have to do the by coursework route. The exam only is for professional certificates only. There's been a recommendation by some of us that a professional development requirement be in place for the introductory courses, and we also have recommended that if they do instill a professional development requirement, that they do use professional development experiences in the last few years and grandfather those in so that people who have been taking advantage of professional development in computer science the last couple of years are able to be grandfathered in. Again, that's just a recommendation. No decisions by the State Department have been made in regards to certification or professional development beyond what is currently listed here about how to get computer science certified via add-on. So there has not been a ton of information out in regards to who needs to be computer science certified. I can tell you K-8 does not if they're not teaching for graduation requirement, and that you need to keep looking at their required credentials document. That's really those first 2 things. So somebody's asking regarding computer science praxis exam PD. If you are a CSTA plus member with the national organization, if you are a CSTA plus member, it's only $50 to join per year. One of the benefits, along with many others, one of the benefits is a $100 discount. So you're already saving some money. A $100 discount on the We Teach CS professional development that is specific to the CS praxis exam. We teach CS. We Teach CS has been teaching this professional development for years now. They've been very successful with it. But the We Teach CS is, and I can't type in this box because I'm in full screen. Somebody can throw it in the chat box. But We Teach CS, their professional development is tailored specifically to the computer science praxis exam. It has great success rates, and they offer a $100 discount. And I believe that brings it down to only $300 as a entire course, a self-guided course to prepare teachers for the praxis exam, which I think is a very affordable option. I understand that that's not free, but I think that it is a fairly affordable option for teachers who are currently looking for options for professional development. That being said, our local chapter will continue to pursue funding and opportunities for that. However, we are pretty bound by what we receive funding for. Thankfully, that Jen Albert is at the Citadel, which is the code.org regional partner. So she's been able to help fund through code.org's initiatives some of the Lowcountry CSTA work that's being done. Additionally, I received a Google professional development grant personally last summer, and I've been able to help fund some of the CSTA, Lowcountry CSTA initiatives as well. But in terms of us bringing free professional development for the praxis exam, that's probably not something that we will be doing anytime soon, just because we don't have a funding source for that initiative. But again, if you're a CSTA Plus member, you can get a discount on We Teach CS. So that's something to consider if you're looking to take the praxis. As we continue along, the Lowcountry CSTA website does have a summer PD. The summer PD page is under events. And I have been attempting to keep an ongoing list of all the professional development that I hear about in regards to computer science. If you hear of anything that I'm missing, please feel free to share. But the opportunities are listed here by week during the summer. So you can begin to look at what professional development would be a good fit for you or your teachers at your school. I do know that some of these opportunities are filling up fast. Some of them are state funded, some of them are not free. So for example, the CS Discoveries, code.org CS Discoveries professional development, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, there is a fee to enroll in the middle school training, but the high school training is free. One thing I'd like to mention to bring everyone's attention to is the 2019 Computer Science Teachers Association Annual Convention, which is in Phoenix, Arizona, the second week in July. I am a massive fan of the Computer Science Teachers Association Conference. It is such a great conference to be at. If you teach computer science or you have computer science teachers, it is not overwhelming to be there. It is exciting. It is a lot of fun. There's so many people there that of all ability levels, and the conference caters to K-12 computer science education. There's tons of amazing information in terms of awesome instructional practices, as well as curriculum showcases, and there's real teachers standing up and teaching you about the cool stuff they're doing in their classrooms. You can see case studies of how implementation has worked in their school districts or in their state. It's an array of computer science topics, and it's a blast, and I strongly suggest you come join us. I will be there. But come spend the week in Phoenix. It's definitely worth it. And with that, I have one more slide. This was one that somebody asked a question about, and so I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. If you are not aware, the 2019 Instructional Materials Caravan is currently underway. I hope your school district has made it to the math and computer science caravans and looked at the resources that are being that have been adopted by the State Department. The vendors stand up, they tell you all about their resources. I'm gonna get on my soapbox here for a moment, and I strongly recommend that your district instructional team, as well as you, do a comprehensive review and map to the current course standards. I sat in the caravan, and I was a little bit surprised. I did not sit on the committee that helped adopt these textbooks, but I did get to see the vendors present their books, and I'm a little bit surprised by some of the books that were chosen. I do not necessarily think they're a great fit for the courses they were chosen for. So as always, any textbook that is chosen should map to the state standards. And so if you are choosing a textbook, I strongly recommend that you ensure that it maps to the standards for the course that you plan to use it in. Additionally, a lot of these classes, especially the introductory classes, do not need a textbook to be taught effectively. We have been teaching fundamentals of computing in our school district for 3 years. We have 7 teachers, I think, now teaching it. They do not have a textbook. There are entire school districts that have been teaching Exploring Computer Science, or now Fundamentals of Computing, as well as the Discovering Computer Science course, and they do not have textbooks, and the teachers have definitely felt like they've had a wealth of resources, more than enough to cover the standards and to keep their students engaged. There's so much free curriculum out there. Now, that is not the purpose of this webinar. I did not have time, or do not have time, to go into all of the free stuff that's out there. We are working on building a resource library on our website. I do have some PowerPoints and things like that if you have specific questions. There's also a ton of stuff out there on the internet in regards to computer science education, and there's some big key players in free curriculum. So I just strongly recommend that you vet your district's choices. And if you're in a district where that decision tends to be made by the district level personnel, you may want to go ahead and get ahead of that and just express your opinion up front, to make sure that a random selection isn't made. That being said, that's all that I had from questions that were submitted ahead of time, or things that I wanted to make sure were covered so that everyone was on the same page. You probably have some additional questions that are going on in your head. I hope that wasn't too much to bombard you with, but I want to go ahead and allow people to unmute their mics. So I'm going to do that now. And if you have questions, you are allowed to unmute your mic, or you can type them in the box. But we are done a little early, which is what I was hoping, because I do anticipate some questions. So at this time, let's talk. Wow, that might be a first. Do we not have any questions? You're very welcome, Tammy. I'm glad it was useful. I was hoping to get everything in one place. Like I said, the recording of this webinar will be on the Lowcountry CSTA website. Because it kicked me out, it's going to be in a few pieces, so I gotta do some editing. So it might be a little bit longer than I was anticipating before this gets posted. It might be Wednesday, but I'll try and work on it tonight to get it up. I might have to do some video editing to make it happen. Yes, and I am updating the FAQs frequently. Thank you, Jen, for the reminder. The FAQ section is extremely thorough. I'm still working on the resources as well as the other page, because nothing fits there. I'm trying to use that section also as a historical archive of some of the stuff that's been ongoing. So if you look at the bottom of the policy page, you will see just kind of a historical timeline. If I'm missing anything, please let me know. Like I said, I kind of want it to be an archive of what the computer science initiatives have looked like. So there's a timeline at the end of just kind of when things were changed or where things were at in the initiatives. And yes, I'm the boring person that sits and listens to the committee meetings on the legislative session because I find it so interesting. So I do try and stay very up to date. I sometimes am a little bit slower than others, but I'm trying to make sure I have all of this good stuff in my brain so I can share it with you all.